So welcome. This topic is quite sensitive, I think, for most of you, and including myself, regarding the market insights to not only rare ultra-orphan diseases that continue to climb, but the future outlook within this therapy class, as well as gene and cell therapy. So, as I call it, in 24 years of my healthcare experience, particularly in specialty pharmacy and payers, we all try to understand the payer environment these days, all try to understand the pharmacy benefit management insights going on. Now we're going to talk specialty pharmacy. And back 10, 15 years ago, specialty pharmacy was basically one term, I understand. And now it's kind of morphed into something more evolving, particularly around rare disease and gene cell therapies, besides understanding the product caveats within that space. So, as we kind of move forward, I call it back in my age, hence why I have to wear glasses now and I'm 50, this is kind of looking back at as a, Fruity Pebbles cereal box when you're a kid. There was just so much going on back then. So, this is a space that continues to evolve, and regarding to what's happening around rare disease and pipeline and payer environment besides the evolving gene and cell therapy space. So I'm Mike Baldzicki. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Premier Specialty Pharmacy, a subsidiary within the Polaris Pharmacy Services umbrella. So we are a pretty large entity, about 1.2 billion. I have about 24 years experience within the specialty pharmacy infusion space. I call it full circle. So I worked for pharma and biotech. I worked with an array of different provider groups and startup specialty pharmacies to ones like Diplomat. Besides being obviously a committee member and board member within a national association of specialty pharmacy, et cetera. So the main message in this picture is I actually don't have a big neck. I just have little ears. It's a proportional thing. But if you can't tell, I did play football, so that's why my son hates that he's going to get that 21-inch neck eventually. So he hates me for that. But I'm going to get into kind of what we do, but a couple housekeeping items as I get into the slides. The slides are more visual. I'm going to throw about a lot of slides at you, a lot of graphical content. I may speak some things that I call it Chewbacca language in this space because it is evolving. And really, to understand it, you kind of got to live and breathe it for many years. A gentleman that we are counterparts in this industry, Randy Falkenrath, can contest that. We have a lot of experience and we continue to learn. So, as I said, Premier is a national specialty pharmacy infusion provider owned by Polaris Pharmacy Services. And we have a very large footprint across the United States. We do provide rare ultra-orphan diseases, infusion services, and nursing support across the bandwidth, working with life science, pharma companies, and other payers. So now getting into, again, the gene cell therapy rare disease market these days. And again, if you have questions, just come up to the mic or just raise your hand. Pretty small audience. So I'm happy to kind of stop and address those, but I will leave time afterwards to kind of speak to these things, what's happening in this space. And what's really happening, and again, what we're seeing evolve is obviously specialty pharmacies increasing in costs. Not only specialty pharmacy, but now the product archetypes behind that of rare ultra-orphan diseases and the gene cell therapy space continues to rise. So back in my day in the late 90s when I stepped in this space working with rare disease, I give an example, hemophilia. I remember in the late 90s, probably 8 factor VIII products. It's a very small disease space of 15, 20,000. And you only had 8 factor VIII products to deal with. There was probably one that contested about 75% of the market. And the average cost of that patient for a payer was about $150,000, $175,000 per member per year. Now we evolve today. We have 26 products of hemophilia factor VIII products on the market, including gene cell therapies. And those are contesting about 2 to 3, maybe even close to $4 million. Now, based on that patient profile, the average cost for a normal hemophilia, based on how they administration their prophylactic dose and maintain their therapy with all the new products, is over $600,000. So what's happening is employers, particularly the self-insured that we're seeing arise, are incurring more of this cost. So they're one claim away from blowing up their benefit design within a union or school district. So like I said, hemophilia, these patients are well managed. So we're actually seeing, between the ages of 18 to 36 being very active, even younger generations playing sports like hockey or lacrosse. So they go to a 6 p.m. practice, they get hit and have a muscle bleed. If you don't have appropriate technologies and case model management to step in appropriately when they have a bleed, a particularly muscle bleed. Overnight, a VP of HR runs her desk the next day at 8 a.m. She has over $1 million claim to deal with. And that is a very real example. So what's happening, particularly the payer space, is the self-insured. The third-party administrators, the self-insured employer groups are now growing faster than health plans. And they're really adjusting their cost controls around specialty pharmacy, particularly the medical benefit, because this usually affects about 2 to 3% of the population, but contests about almost 75% of their specialty pharmacy spend. So the reality is specialty pharmacy is a very large bucket and is projected to be over almost $900 billion by 2028. Besides, now we're looking at infusion drugs, $150 billion market projected, and about 46% of the pipeline in the next 3 years are infusion drugs. So the medical benefit of how we manage infusion is not going away. As well, health systems. I'm a big advocate of working with health systems and looking at them in regards to what they're doing, particularly regionalized ones, but they're becoming the new payer. They're trying to control the regionalized national footprints. They're becoming their own PBM. And right now, if you look at any hospital system, 500, 600 beds or more, they have already a specialty pharmacy capability. Not full scale, but some type of capability they're owning. And now they're not only concerned with the revenue stream and controls of their own health system, they're moving out in the community, particularly infusion, 50-mile radius or more out in the community to form these infusion centers, work with the physician groups. That 66% of physician groups are owned by a health system, and how to control, I call it GPM, gross profit margin. And now we set into the digital therapeutics arena. Again, this is big area that we're seeing more and more with digital health that's going to drive more big data and analytics. It's supposed to be about almost a $70 billion market by 2030. That's going to step into digital health with pharma, with payers, with specialty pharmacies. And it's not all doom and gloom, but it's going to create process parameters of grabbing appropriate data analytics so we can better grab information around rare disease, gene cell therapy that's needed. And I'll get into that a little bit later. Besides understanding the supply chain, and again, as I just transitioned my notes, so sorry. The supply chain has really become multifaceted. I mean, 15 years ago, there may have been 8 players up here. Now everyone has stepped into owning, managing, partnering around specialty pharmacy cost containment and utilization, drug fulfillment, patient assistance programs, I'm sure you're all familiar with, getting into this game around this area. But what's happened is the supply chain logistics has become so fragmented that it affects more and more of the supply, the demand, the inventory management, and access for these patients. So the main message on this slide, we need better collaboration around this, better partnerships, so we can improve access between stakeholders involved. And that still has really not happened. We're seeing more and more of these partnerships, even with health systems partnering with specialty pharmacies to expand their services. More health systems becoming even PBMs or partnering with other PBMs. So again, we're seeing more and more of these elusive partnerships, but it really hasn't stepped full forward. Besides understanding what's shifting in healthcare is looking at lifestyle medicine or social determinants on health, holistically managing the patient instead of the disease category, the product they're on. And again, this is going to allow for more targeted precision medicine, especially when we're looking at genetic testing to manage the holistic part of that precision medicine, that member. And this is very interesting because, again, we talk about digital health. There's a large number of digital health companies stepping into this game, just looking at, when you have so much, areas of concern with regards to obesity, hypertensive, weight gain that affects diabetes. So again, really driving the holistic approach, and digital health is going to kind of help us get there. So now we're going to step into what's happening in regards to specialty pharmacy trends. As I alluded to, a lot of information here, but the mainstay on specialty trend is new drugs for rare disease, more utilization management, more new indications. And again, the rare disease component, you're going to see a couple of slides that are very visual. The pipeline is very rich, and I think that's what's changing the game. We see more and more competitive information product launches in rare disease besides the gene cell therapy launches that we're now full frontal of seeing that arise. Besides, as I said, infusion management. If you don't truly understand infusion drugs and how they're administered and reimbursed on the medical benefit, besides medical policy with payers driving site of care, I'll get into that a little bit, but you really got to understand those components when looking at infusion drugs, subcutaneous, intramuscular, et cetera. And then obviously the gene cell therapy market. Yeah. And like I said, the gene cell therapy market is just starting to hit us in the face. And right now it's particularly brokers, stop loss reinsurers are really looking at this space, really haven't adjusted some things based on the cost models, just because right now, with all the launches, most of the pharma companies that are launching in this space are really using 5 called centers of excellence or hubs. And those are, large academia health systems that can have, the management of the procurement, the inventory, the administration of these high cost drugs appropriately. What's going to shift come 2025 and I think 2027 is, when you have 30, 70 gene cell therapies, this space is going to have to shift outside the hospital, these 10 centers of excellence, and into the specialty pharmacy channel, and maybe others that are, shifting as a hub, maybe even, high touch model of ambulatory infusion centers, just because of the large amount of inventory, cost, and overall oversight of these gene cell therapies to get them to the patient. So with that, like I said, the medical benefit is still a very high area of interest because it's just not about pharmacy spend. And the reason for that is the complexities and challenges around looking at cost, network, formulae, medical policy. There's numerous challenges to look at when you're addressing how to launch your product in the payer environment. And again, these are just some of them highlighted, et cetera, because the chronic illness is still directly affiliated with the high cost claim. Besides, high cost claims are just different, how you got to look at them. No high cost claim is the same. When you're looking at rare disease like hemophilia, IVIG, to now some of the first launches that we're seeing launch because of the patient journey mapping and the lack of data we have. So again, a lot of data right now is inconsistent just because of it only goes 2 years out, maybe 5 years out. We need more data to understand what's happening with this drug and patient journey mapping. And again, this is what employers particularly are doing and health plans around specialty management, particularly they call it medical benefit management programs. And it really starts for this process of understanding what's going on in medical benefit, how to improve your contract terms with your PBM or entity that you're partnering to carve out. And we're seeing even actual medical benefit program carve-outs. For the first time in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen large brokers like Aon, Willis Towers Watson, Lockton, et cetera, Marsh, really look at this and actually send an RFI or an RFP to vendors specifically asking for a specialty pharmacy medical benefit vendor and fill it out. That has never happened before. And I've been, obviously gracious to even present to their pharmacy teams at Lockton and Aon to educate them on this space, just because they really, typical pharmacists don't get a large number of insights that work at these entities to understand what's going on in just specialty alone, besides the medical benefit and how you look at that differently than typical pharmacy spend, okay? And the reason for that is, again, the high area of rare disease pipeline. This is just excluding oncology. Everyone's so focused on oncology, and I don't even go there. When I talk to clients, I don't even talk oncology. That is such a hard lift at this point. And again, you're not going to peel that onion back away from the academia centers with the large oncology centers and cancer centers. They do a pretty good job, and there's a large number of other things when you look at oncology spend, oncology pathways, et cetera, that you got to consider. That's a whole noose of mazes that you got to consider. The real issue is, again, the rare disease pipeline. It is robust and huge right now. Besides understanding that we have a huge pipeline of 49 coming, I call it first runs, first of kind we've ever seen in a disease category. To even understand that and map that patient journey appropriately and grab information, data analytics, and give that to the appropriate parties involved, stakeholders that got to ensure that we're doing a good contract, volume-based or outcome-based agreements to product access, benefit design, et cetera, is going to be a challenge. As well, now we step into biosimilars, right? This has kind of been slow uptake, But I think in the last couple months, with some payer policies that are taking effect even into 1/1, we're going to see an uptick in the biosimilar market. They kind of even shifted the biosimilar companies in regards to how they're going to play the reimbursement game on this to make it more plush for players to kind of move in this space. So this is and I always kill the name. My wife's a nurse, so she kills me. Humira, however you say it. But huge amount of pipeline just in this category alone, besides other biosimilar company products coming down the pipeline. Additionally, again, like I said, the drug approvals just in 2022, 37 in small molecule and biologics. Again, some large players. And again, now we're looking at what's coming in gene and cell therapy. So again, 5 out of the 10 gene therapies in 2023 so far have been, 5 out of these 10 have been gene therapy. And again, even an update, probably 6 now because of the hemophilia product just approved. So again, we're seeing more enrichment into this market right now and what to do and how to manage it, besides just understanding what cell and gene therapies are. That's the confusion for most, right? A lot of them think when the first hemophilia product came, I got a call from a very large underwriter, stop-loss company in the country, said, can you get on a call with our team to educate us? Because we're all freaking out how to underwrite this to our clients because everyone thinks everyone's going to be on this in the hemophilia population. I said, no. So I worked with the National Hemophilia Foundation. We presented a large presentation to them saying, hey, providers and patients probably will wait a little bit because the stipulations to be on a gene cell therapy or cell therapy is really rigorous. Can't drink and smoke. You got to have certain requirements, right? So again, not everyone's going to jump gun to this. Besides, once you try one, you're done. So again, they may wait till 5, 10 others are on the market to assess what's the right one for me before they even go there. So understanding that, again, the challenges that patient and product journey mapping is critical besides looking at the significant reimbursement, manufacturing, supply chain challenges that are undertaking in this area. I speak with a large number of life science companies coming out with really unique gene cell therapies. It's the manufacturing process is tough, and a lot of them will fail just to get there. So again, even though we see a rich pipeline, it's still a lot of challenges how they come out. And again, this is what's staggering. There's over almost 4,000 therapies in development. Obviously, we hear CAR T therapies. Besides the gene therapies, and oncology is really robust, but don't forget, like I said, the rare disease, because that's half the split. And again, just an illustration of that rare disease pipeline that I like to highlight, because everyone wants to go to cancer and control that cost. You got to really look at rare diseases, because I think those are the undercutting ones that's going to pop up in your benefit design, particularly employers and self-insured and health plans, and going to really blow up the benefit design from that standpoint. And in next couple slides, we'll get into more visual just how big this is, because I'm a big believer come even 2025, 2027, this is going to hit particularly the reinsurers, stop-loss underwriters in the face because of the pipeline and the costs associated with it, and what to do, right? How do we afford this? Again, 29 gene cell therapies in the market. Again, November 2022, so that figure has changed. But what's interesting is we're going to see hopefully 14 gene cell therapies this year be launched. That is a huge undertaking. And we got probably 5 or more next year. So by 2025, we should see between 30 and 40 gene cell therapies. By 2027, that should go to 60, maybe 50. And then 2030, that should be above 80. That is a huge climb in this market. And again, great illustration is that we have 40 therapies likely to launch in 36 months. So again, the red circle within that is the focus because of the phase where it's at, right? Marketed versus, particularly when you start getting a phase 2, phase 3, if you understand the market entrance of how pharma works, these are the ones that are probably moving forward in some sense. Phase 2 a little bit, but we typed it, ourselves from a specialty pharmacy component, really start working with life science companies when they start entering into that phase 2 component with trials and patients. Besides obviously looking at this chart from phase and by company, this is huge. I mean, look at the outer quadrant. I mean, this is another one that shows just therapeutical area of focus. The number of products that are just even considered outside this circle in the middle is massive. And what's even more alarming to me, if you look at the area of just rare disease and gene cell therapy particularly, is typically when you were in rare disease or gene cell therapy launches, your population, your eligible population base, 20, maybe pushing 50,000. On some of the launches, we're going to see first of kind above that. We're going to see maybe 100,000, maybe 200,000, maybe above that, eligible to receive such therapies. And that equates to higher utilization, more indication, more volume, more cost. So again, this is something that I don't think the market's really preparing themselves for. And that's where I think the shift from hospitals to, high touch, rare disease, specialty pharmacies to other players involved that have to partner and really grab their arms around this to say, what's the journey mapping around this with these members? How do we better cost model this and forecast revenue and impact? How do we help these patients ensure they get access? Besides understanding all the quadrants around what we do as health advocates to say, what are those programs? Alternative funding, that's in the news, right? I mean, what's going on there, right? Crazy, crazy stuff in regards to, like, as I said, it's like sitting back when you're a kid looking at, a Fruity Pebbles box. So much going on, it just confuses you. And again, this is an area where we're highlighting the trials even and watching this space because it's going to, again, continue to climb, besides continue to affect the most area of focus around the medical benefit. And now we're seeing medical benefit even drive certain areas of focus. And if you haven't really heard this, I really pull you to kind of educate yourselves. We're not looking at just hospital outpatient costs. That's in the news. It's 500% markups, et cetera, right? We're looking at continued physician offices with infusion chairs. Now we're looking at site of care. So that means not just home, but the climbing and venture capital interests of pouring money into the ambulatory infusion centers. You even see pharmacies like ourselves and others putting up these, brick and mortar infusion clinics, ambulatory infusion centers all across the country. Huge venture capital companies are investing. They're acquiring these ambulatory infusions, and then they're going out and acquiring specialty pharmacies to fold in so they can, control the product and the gross profit margin off these infusion drugs. Because I can tell you, especially pharmacy gross profit margin off drug, if I had friends come to me like Randy, and Randy said, hey, Mike, let's go start a specialty pharmacy, I'd probably tilt my head to him and go, good luck. Because the reimbursement on specialty oral drugs is maybe 1 to 3% gross profit margin. 5 if you're lucky. 5 if you're lucky. So again, that's a challenge when you're operating a very high-touch system. But infusion drugs, based on the product, I still see this range based on reimbursement and other fees associated with it, including rebates now. You can get rebates on medical benefit, even hemophilia drugs. That gross profit margin can range between 19 to 66%. And again, if you haven't paid attention to the big boys of the big insurers that own all this space, look at the last 5, 8, 10 years of their acquisitions. All focused around infusion companies. That's for a reason, besides their provider groups. So again, the ambulatory infusion center is going to be robust. And the reason for that, it's a $150 billion projected market. 60% of the therapies seeking approval in infusion. And again, 50% of those infusions are now driven by the site of care program. Understand site of care. Because this space, to payers and brokers like Berkeley and others I present this to, we got a lot of bagging going on. What the heck is this? We got white bagging, brown bagging, clear bagging, now gold bagging? So before we just kind of understood, back in the day, brown bagging, where we dropped off the drug to the patient brought in a physician and they infused. Brown bagging doesn't really exist anymore. So now we have white bagging, where pharmacies like ourselves will work with ambulatory infusion centers and we'll actually ship that product there. We take care of that reimbursement. They don't. They bill for the non-ancillary and everybody's happy and saves a lot of money. Great example on a very new drug that came to market a couple years back, about 2 years, 3 years. I won't say it, but it was going through a hospital outpatient. It was going through Cigna Credo, and Credo said, got to go through us, it's in our network. TPA called me and said, hey, They say it has to go to patient, outpatient for infusion, and the drug's going to be $1.2 million alone. Will kill my school district. What can you do? Based on it residing in the medical benefit, we had some contractual wiggle room. So we took over and literally moved that to a white bag ambulatory infusion center 5 miles down the street and shaved off over $950,000 off that bill just by doing that. So again, there are options. That's why I tell people, understand how to explore options in this channel maze that we're in, because these things continue to evolve. Besides, clear bagging and gold bagging belong to the hospitals that own their own specialty pharmacy. Clear bagging is kind of same thing. They own their own specialty pharmacy, they own their physicians, they're going to maneuver the fulfillment and distribution of that drug between those X's, right? Now we have gold bagging that just came out, I think late last year, beginning of this year. Gold bagging, same as clear bagging, but now hospitals say, hey, we're actually going to put KPIs, key performance indicators, quality of life metrics. We're really going to manage these patients holistically from that standpoint. So this is now gold bagging because we can provide all these services. So it's just another term how that swaps over to clear bagging. And like I said, the great example of using ambulatory infusion centers. So this is a real example working with a large health plan, running a site of care program on IVIG. Who knows IVIG? Been around forever, right? High cost still to a lot of payers. So we identified CIDP diagnosis and said, hey, what if we, instead of the home or hospital outpatient, what if we move these members that live within a 25-mile radius in an ambulatory infusion center? What could we do there? And besides other products they may be on to manage their chronic illness, besides IVIG, maybe Remicade fits in there. So again, this is not the first example. Other players up in Washington, others have drove site of care programs around IVIG and Remicade, had huge cost savings. But this is what's being done with ambulatory infusion centers right now. This is why it's such an increased interest, because you can really drive appropriate cost savings based on the demographic, and I call it geo-access mapping with members, based on select diagnosis and select therapies. And again, considerations when managing high-cost claims. So a lot here. I'm going to speed up because I have 15 minutes. I just want to get through some of the key points. Financial solutions. Again, a lot of different financial models coming out to how to pay for this, loan-based models, etc. Pay attention. I always tell folks, pay attention to New York and Connecticut because that's where the banks are. They're all over this. You're going to see a lot of evolving models on gene and cell therapies, particularly on how to, do we do a house loan or something? How do we pay for this? A lot of value-based and outcome-based agreements around this as well, and how we select that clinical criteria that must be met. And if it fails, who flips the bill? Who pays for that $3 million if it doesn't work? And like I said, digital therapeutics will continue to support the challenge of all this craziness of up and down nitty-gritty of adherence that equates to documentation. So again, a lot of different caveats when you say digital health, digital therapeutics. There's a different mainstream of how you categorize that within each entity, and you have to understand that because there's over 300, 400 companies in digital health saying they can do X, Y, and Z. So commercialization approach within that. So, the component of understanding what's going on with especially medical benefit, again, some of the terms, transparency, a lot going on in contract. How do we monitor our contract terms better? Data management, network, prior authorization. How do we take that away from the big players and manage ourselves from that standpoint? And like I said, product archetypes. Understand the product archetypes involved when you're looking at specialty pharmacy, an infusion model, hospital, and how you work with payers, or pharma, sorry. And again, the approach to a product launch is really these quadrants, but I really, focus on 4 of them, looking at that support of patients, that completion of therapy versus innovative payment models. And, number 6 is key because I came from pharma. They got to start thinking differently. This is not a typical cardiovascular hypertension drug back in the 90s that you have a blockbuster $3 billion drug you're launching. Not that model. You got to think differently when you're looking at support and market access when you're launching a product and who are the players involved that need to be included. And again, this is some of the areas of creating that value across that stream of a product launch working with pharma. And again, data and clinical development versus distribution partners and your revenue forecasting are the key ones. Besides understanding when do you wait? Are you the first to entrance? Are you last? And again, these are great scenarios of fast uptake versus slow uptake, and why. Will physicians, meaning providers and patients, wait? Are you the first to come on a new therapy? How quickly does that evolve to your market entrance? Versus understanding, factors that drive that uptake of speed. So again, efficacy, right? Data, quality of life, difference, that risk, that durability of administration of infusion, dosing administration, it all considers. But again, what we're seeing is continued challenges for pharma in this space because not demonstrating that long-term benefit of data collection really lacks. I mean, even if you look at some of the CAR T cell with some of these players, the data is only maybe 2 years. Even if it's 5, what happens after? We're seeing some of these gene cell therapies launch that after 3 years, even hemophilia, they may need an on-demand or maintenance dose just to maintain. It's not a curable. So who pays for that when they've paid $3 million on a drug alone? Now 3 years later, they need maybe 100,000 units of hemophilia. That's going to cost that. Who's going to pay for that extra money? So what does that value-based outcome contract look like and who's flipping that bill? Besides understanding what market access success is, and again, the challenge is accurate revenue forecasting, making sure we know what's going to move that first advantage, besides understanding the product level drivers, durability expectations to, again, administration of the product's going to be huge because there's a lot of challenges there. And advancing the access to understanding payers, concerns around affordability versus patient access for these type of rare disease and gene cell therapies. And that future direction of therapy is really going to look at very different models. On the bottom here is really, we're seeing gene cell therapy carve-outs, particularly in a TPA self-insured. They're just going to the benefit and saying, you know what, I'm just going to offer alternative funding and not cover anything else. So if they're not eligible, they're on their own. And that is not the message we want. So again, there's a large number of noise and different models going into the space. Besides, what I find interesting across the world is there's a large number of clinical and economical perceptions. If you look at the US, it's just free pricing. Everyone else, clinical effectiveness, budget optimization, there's still a large concern just pricing and reimbursement and access.